wanted to ask is that you know, the meaning of sex in these books is so different from like how we conceptualize it as this like, you know, one man and one woman like commitment, you know, the kind of the physical expression of that commitment. And I think, you know, Susan and I were talking about like what does fidelity mean in this world, because it's really clear that Nora and Soren are like faithful to one another, but at the same time, you know, it's not sexually. So it's kind of like what is the meaning of sex in this community, in this world that you've created, and fidelity as well.
Well, they have their own set of rules and their own moral code. If you like, I've been reading a book on chivalry from like the 11th and 12th century, and they had their own rules, and the ideal love during the courtly era of the 12th century in France was a knight for a married woman. So that was true love. If you could not be truly in love with your own spouse. This was the idea of love back then. This was the concept. Two people married to each other could not be in love with each other because there was no jealousy. And if there was not jealousy, there was not love. So this is an idea of love that is completely foreign to modern Americans. We consider jealousy something toxic and a sign of suspicion and a lack of trust. But it was a completely different moral code that they had back then in the courtly era. And this world of the Eighth Circle and Kingsley and Nora and Soren have their own court, and they have their own code as well. Nora has earned her freedom. For one thing, she left Soren and said, "I don't care what you think anymore. I'm going to do whatever I want." And then she went back to him, and they created their own rules so that she could be a dominant and still be his submissive. And they compromise like any other couple. They have to argue and sometimes break up and get back together and compromise and figure out what's going to work for them. And for them, for Nora, she needs to be able to have sex with whoever she wants to have sex with. If Soren tries to keep her from being free in that area, she will leave him. In a similar way, Soren needs to be able to beat up whoever he wants to beat up. Because if Nora has already been beaten the night before, if she gets beaten on Wednesday night, she can't get beaten again on Thursday night. You got to wait till she heals, especially if they do pretty rough kink. If he needs it 2 nights in a row, then he goes and he gets it from somebody else, obviously somebody willing. If you read my email, you will know there are at least 10,000 volunteers who would happily throw their feet at throw themselves at Soren's feet, say, "Beat the shit out of me." It would be an honor. So he doesn't have to do anything non-consenting. He has plenty of volunteers, but that's how their relationship works. For him, being able to be a sadist with somebody and exercise that part of him is his release. More important than orgasm for him is him to be able to do this. For Nora, she needs to have sexual union. It's just part of her personality. And as Kingsley teases in The Mistress, when he talks about her magic pussy, that lost men sail into it and find themselves. What is it called? The reverse Bermuda Triangle. Lost men sail into her pussy and find themselves. So again and again and again, when she has sex with men, they end up better off after they've slept with her. Zach, Michael, Griffin, Kingsley, Soren, Lance in The Last Goodnight. They're better off afterwards. Daniel in 7 Day Loan. So this is part of her, what makes her her. And for Soren to tell her she could not do that would be his way of saying, "You can't be you." So the most important thing is fidelity to themselves. "To thine own self be true," said Shakespeare. So that's step one in the world. You have to be true to yourself. If you are bisexual, like Kingsley is, you have sex with men and women. Even if you love Juliet, which he does, and wants to have children with her, he also has sex with men and other women, because that's who he is, and he's honest about it. And she has agreed to that. She accepts it. She's faithful to who she is as a person. Nora is, Soren is, and what makes real love in the world is when other people accept that and try not to change them. And that's the reason Nora and Wesley were never going to work, because Nora would have to change for Wesley. She did not have to change for Soren. He had to change for her, though, and accept who she was, but Wesley never would, and that's why they didn't work out.
And I love, actually, one of the things that really kept me in the book, even though it was really hard, was when Nora is, like, in her mind, like, imagining stabbing Soren in the neck. Like, because it's like, it's not like she's losing herself in it. She still has this, like, I hate this guy, but I love this guy, and I kind of wanted to ask you about, there's that point at the end of The Mistress where she slaps Soren in the face and screams at him for making her water that stick for 6 months. Unbelievably satisfying moment for that, for, like, you know, kind of
for her and me.
Yeah, that was my question. It's like, how did that feel for you? Because
it was so good. That was one of the things I knew before. There are certain scenes and certain lines I know exist before I even start writing. Like, the book is always percolating. The next book is always percolating in my imagination. Like, I'm doing edits on book 7 now, but book 8 is already in there. Certain lines, certain scenes I'm excited about writing, and those keep me going even when I don't exactly know where the book is going. It's like, well, I know at some point this scene will happen, so I have to work toward that. I have to work to the moment where Nora finally chews Soren out and slaps him, steals his motorcycle, and rides off into the sunset like the absolute badass she is. And so that kept me going. I was so excited to write that. Yeah, it was hugely satisfying, and nobody loves Soren more than I do. Readers might argue with me. They're like, no, I think about him every day. It's like, well, I created him. He is inside of me. No one loves him more than I do, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed slapping him because he earned that. It was about time. So